Hello there, I'm Richie and you're watching IG Critic. If someone asked what makes Dark Souls amazing, we would say legendary boss fights. Whether it's the magnificent orchestral backing, the teeth-grinding difficulty, or just the way they always feature as a suitable climax for some lethal little labyrinth, the bosses in Dark Souls are undoubtedly the core of what makes this series great. Yet some of those bosses do stand out more than others. They can hang around within our memory for years, whilst others get replaced by trivia about pencils. Did you know pencils are the only writing instruments that can be used underwater and in space? What was I talking about? We all have our favourites, but let's see how they stack up. Raise your shields and give in to that twitchy urge of self-preservation. This is IG Critic's Top 10 Most Memorable Bosses in the Dark Souls series. Kicking off at number 10 is the Duke's Dear Freya. As you descend through the thick cobwebs of Brightstone Cove Seldora, you know there's a big spider coming. It couldn't be more obvious. You've already skewered the little ones, but you can just smell the impending doom of the huge mama spider getting ever more prominent, as the webs get thick enough to stand on and the caves get darker, deeper and more deadly. They might as well have stuck up signs saying 8-legged boss monster ahead, equip rolled up newspapers now for bonus damage. And yet, out of all the bosses in Dark Souls, the reveal of Freya still manages to be horrifying. Perhaps it's the specifics of her arachnid body. Crooked, deformed, and with two hideous heads at either end of her abdomen, this colossal creepy crawly scuttles towards you with gleeful hunger, her oversized legs hunched around her carapace figure like bars on a gilded cage. Or perhaps it's her full name of the Duke's Dear Freya, which conjures all sorts of unnerving imagery and ideas. Or maybe it's the fact she can tear you in half with the beams of magical energy fired from both ends. Yeah, that might be it. Our number 9 is Yadagindar. Wait. Our number 9 is hang on. Judix Gandar? Judix Gundyr is our number 9. Judging by first appearances, the first boss of Dark Souls 3 may be a little disappointing. A big guy in armor with a very silly name. That's it. The other two games began with monstrous mega titans dropping in to stomp you into mulch, and here we've got a chunky bloke in a tin can. There we go, happily hacking away, when suddenly his top half explodes into a black tangle of demonic evil the size of an elephant on steroids, making the kind of noise that no living being should ever have to hear. Stay on your toes, or in a matter of moments, you'll be respawning back at the previous bonfire with a noticeably flatter head. Remember, there's one thing you cannot do in a Dark Souls game. Think you understand it and get complacent. Judix Gundyr's transformation tactic may be a trick, but it's a trick that works. For that reason, he deserves this place on this list. Number 8, Pinwheel. Yep, Pinwheel. You didn't mishear me. Out of all the bosses in Dark Souls, Pinwheel may be the only boss that potentially makes people laugh. He's the Magikarp of the series, going down so easily that he's almost no different than the regular enemies you fought on the way to his location. It made us wonder if the developers from Software were playing a joke. Was he about to be replaced by a better boss? Was he faking his wounds? Would he keep coming back if I didn't fulfill some criteria? No. Pinwheel is as he is because he is. But he is kind of endearing for that reason, the little kid in the big boys club. After being badly abused by every foe you encounter throughout Dark Souls, finding a boss who's weaker than you is oddly amusing. When you meet Pinwheel, just kick the idiot into the gutter and move on, chuckling as you do. He's not immortal, just a pesky necromancer. In the 7th spot, the Nameless King. It stands to reason that the final boss would be the most challenging, right? Wrong. It's the bosses in Dark Souls that you don't have to fight that you should fear most. The greatest suffering is always that which we hunt out for ourselves. Considered by most to be the hardest boss in Dark Souls 3, the Nameless King knows what he's doing when it comes to a bit of fanfare. climb to the top of Archdragon Peak and ring a bell the size of a small apartment to summon a chaotic storm, inside of which this madman dwells. Before you challenge the king, you must first destroy his mount. It's got some decent offense, but not much health, and telegraphs most attacks pretty clearly, allowing you to roll out of the way without difficulty. Once the prelude is over, the real battle begins. The towering figure on its back, who looks like a combination of Sauron and a homeless man, steps down, picks up a lightning spear with which you can skewer and roast an elephant in seconds, and he goes berserk. Rumour has it that the Nameless King is the son of Gwyn, the final boss from the first Dark Souls game, which wouldn't surprise me. Beware as he unleashes a torrent of electric attacks that would make even Thor feel inadequate. Challenge this optional boss at your peril, because this is where the men are separated from the boys. Sixth and scary, the High Lord Wolnir. I don't pretend to be particularly wise, but even I know that when you see a skull-themed chalice emanating pure darkness, that you should turn and run like the wind. Giving it a careful poke will take you to a long, barely lit room, where you'll search around blindly for some sort of sign that there's a giant skeleton in here! Run, run, run! A skull 5 times bigger than your avatar lunges forward in the darkness. 2 bone hands reaching out hungrily, glowing gold bands rattling on his wrists. An image that would even make Charles Dickens wet himself. That initial intimidation had many sprinting in a panicky terror the other way up the room, with Wolnir dragging himself along in a slow, grinning pursuit. These days, it takes a lot to make a classic skeleton boss frightening, but From Software managed to make it hold weight once again. Our fifth is the father of the Abyss, Manus. Not because he's the most visually fascinating boss in Dark Souls, which he isn't. Not because he's an enjoyable boss fight, again, which he isn't. It's not even because you get an interesting companion to help you out with the skirmish. No. Dark Souls boss Manus is great because he represents everything that works about the Dark Souls lore. Even though Manus was introduced as early as Dark Souls 1 in downloadable content, we still know almost nothing about him, at least not for sure. Was Manus a regular mortal before his humanity was corrupted? Was Manus the mythical furtive pygmy as many now suspect? Who was the serpent that urged the naive people of Lacileto to go hunting for his body in the abyss, and what were their motivations in doing so? We only have fragments of information, as befits a game taking place at the end of a society. And that's what makes him intriguing. Everyone has their own personal theory of the truth, one made from scraps of data and a lot of guesswork. Consequently, Dark Souls is one of the few games that actually inspires debate on what the story means, not just regarding subtext, but genuine discussion about the basic plot points. It's a great aspect of the narrative that can only ever work this well in video games, and Manus is the embodiment of that design. Fourth is the deadly duet, Dragon Slayer Ornstein and Executioner Schmal. One of the most well-known battles that Dark Souls has ever offered, this deadly duo waiting for you in the last rooms of Anor Londo have inspired grief and frustration the world over. They make a pretty odd-looking pair though, one as lanky as a lamppost, and the other so rotund he defies the laws of physics by jumping incredibly high. One of the great things about these bosses is the sense of bombast and magnificence. You've spent the last few hours walking through a glorious marble city, fighting soldiers from the strongest army ever formed, and witnessing truly architectural wonder as you do. So it really makes sense that it finishes with 2 of the most impressive figures in the city, a fabled knight without equal, and the city's most feared butcher. If that weren't enough for you, Ornstein and Smaug are dressed in gold armour and defending a god princess upstairs. Probably. Both warriors having a different fighting style keeps you on your toes, with Ornstein dashing back and forth quickly, while Smaug makes slow, lethal strikes. Things really heat up when you manage to defeat one of them, at which point their comrade in arms will finish them off without regret and gain a massive power boost. Yay! Good thing that Solaire is waiting outside to help you if you need it, because otherwise you might be stuck for a while. Third is the sad sovereign, King Vendrick. You think you know misery? You think you know despair? Then take a look at the pathetic, barely existent figure that is the great King Vendrick, and think again. God, what a miserable soul. For ages in Dark Souls 2, you are led to believe the ruler of Drangleic is the true villain of the piece, having inflicted untold misery on his kingdom and that of the giants. Surely King Vendrick would be a true vision of evil, right? Nope. Vendrick was just a pawn in the schemes of his wife Nashandra, who turns out to be a fragment of Manus' soul given life. Regardless, through a series of poor choices and regrettable events, Vendrick ends up locked in a crypt to go slowly insane, separated from his own soul and consequently becoming a tormented, mindless shell. A bit like somebody who spends 20 minutes watching reality TV, or follows one of the Kardashians on Twitter. The most depressing thing is that Vendrick won't even fight you until you make the first move, shuffling limply in pointless little circles until you finally decide to hack at his ankles to put him out of his torment. He is the size of a giraffe, yet he still manages to look weak and emaciated. That's pretty impressive, if nothing else. Second and salivating, Sif, the Great Grey Wolf. Dire wolves and excessive violence are pretty snazzy, but Dark Souls was combining those things way before Game of Thrones thought it was cool. No, hold on, the Game of Thrones books came first. Well, does that show have its dire wolves wield large swords in their mouths? I didn't think so. Thus, we have Sif, the Great Grey Wolf, who manages to be one of the most well-recognised characters in the series. Everything she does sticks with you. The tragic backstory, the epic boss fight, the first ominous reveal, even the fact you get to summon a young version of Sif to fight with you later on. Perhaps what makes Sif really stand out is that she is one of the most sympathetic, comprehensible entities you'll encounter. Sif is guarding the grave of her master out of loyalty, limps painfully when you hurt her too much, and even looks forlorn about the ideal of initiating combat if you met and befriended her earlier on. It's sad, but also kind of touching. It's strange that one of the most human elements of Dark Souls comes from a big dog. Or maybe that's the point. Sif might just be one of the most beloved figures in Dark Souls, and who should argue with man's best and most dangerous friend. Last, but certainly not least, is the Asylum Demon. The very first appearance of a Dark Souls boss always has the most impact. So when blubbery, warty death drops from the ceiling and prepares to smash you to bits, you take up arms, you raise your shield, and you run! Just turn on your heel and get out of there! Seriously, Dark Souls tells you to vamoose when this thing shows up, so take the hint. Don't worry, a little later on, you'll get to drop off a ledge and drive a spike into its brain, so it all works out for the best. Though if you do beat him the first time round, you get the Demon's Hammer. The Asylum Demon was a wonderful thing, because it so perfectly stated what the whole series was going to be about. Monsters with cryptic backgrounds, brutal challenges that left you twitchy with adrenaline, and a choir shrieking minor chords to help set the scene. The Asylum Demon even made a return in Dark Souls 3 as a fossilized version of itself. Because moisturizing is difficult when undead heroes keep jumping on your head and try to kill you. It's been stated that everyone remembers their first Dark Souls boss, and the first encounters are no exception. And honestly, that's probably the moment where Dark Souls is at its soulsiest. Dark Souls is meant to be hard, it's meant to tax you. If you find it easy, then you're not getting the full experience. So, we'll always appreciate the Asylum Demon for being the resolute symbol of that first challenge, because at some point, everyone has had to face that struggle. Dark Souls is oozing with challenging boss battles, quite literally in some cases, and these are the ones we chose for the top 10. When you think back over the series, what scary spectres spring to mind? What creepies make your skin crawl? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like, subscribe, and check out igcritic.com for more memorable monsters across the gamersphere. Thanks for watching!